Hello, everybody. This is Joeboy185 here, and today bringing you my very first fighting game podcast. It's something I always wanted to do. But before I jump into that, I want to introduce my three friends here: Lit the Rain, Main G Jago, and Seth 508. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump straight into this.
All right, guys. So for the first discussion we're going to have going on here, we're going to talk about the nature of mashing on, which is pretty prevalent in net play overall. So we're going to talk about the stigma behind mashing. So, Joe, in your opinion, like, what do you define mashing? Like, how do you define the nature behind it? Like, would you say that mashing is just simply pressing buttons to hopefully hit your opponent out of situations that were unforeseen, or is it just mashing out of teching, like, or maybe you're just mashing a button and then, you're just hopefully trying to like just tag and maybe hit your opponent from dropping a combo or something like that? Like, what is your opinion on that matter? Like, what would you say your opinion on the matter subject of mashing?
Well, mashing used to be something that everybody kind of had to do, especially in older games, like the older Blaze Blue Continuum Shift, where you had to mash just to get out of combos. I know some games still use that, but for the most part, mash is just repeatedly hitting a button over and over again. But it's just that you could use mashing in different ways. It is smart mashing, just dumb mashing, just people that just don't know what to hit, so they just throw their face on the controller for the most part. I'm pretty sure you fought several people like that before.
Right. So, what is your opinion on Magic? Like, how do you feel about the whole stigma behind Magic? Because I know a lot of players that come from a competitive aspect of fighting games. Doesn't matter if you're from Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear, Under Knights. Some games they'll allow you to get away with mashing. Some players have an opinion matter about mashing, just generally being this very negative aspect of player skill sets. And I'm just trying to see. Just what it is behind mashing that people just hate about it when they go on net play or even offline for that matter. You just people get bashed about just mashing as a very illegitimate nature of playing the game. How do you feel about that? Like, what's your opinion on mashing just being a very negative outlook on the player itself as a community?
Well, actually, I don't think mashing is too bad. In some situations, you can mash right. I don't really think it's nothing too negative about it. I only have a problem with people who mash that they don't have anything in particular in mind, so they just mash it. Okay, I have a problem with that. But if it gets them to win, that may mean that you need to be on top of your game or something, you know. But
I see. Well, Jago, you have any comments on the matter?
Well, the topic of match for me has always been kind of like a tug of war situation, and this is what I mean when I say tug of war. When you fight against a Japanese player, no matter what you're doing on block, those players are always pushing buttons. Even if what you're doing is a frame trap, they are pushing buttons in some kind of way. But at the same time, these are the people who come up with a lot of information about how to counter certain tactics and option selects before American players do. So is mashing for them a calculated thing that they just know what to mash at the right time because they notice your pressure? Is all of this planned out by Japanese players, or do they just press buttons just as much as American players do without no justifiable means?
Mm, that's a very good point there. For me, I just feel that Japanese players, this is essentially the same thing that you said. I feel like Japanese players, they mash buttons, they mash buttons just as much as American players do. But the nature of how they do it, I just feel like it's perhaps, just maybe smarter or whatnot. Their understanding of the game is perhaps even better than most American players, for that matter, as they consistently usually beat us majority of the time, if not all the time, even at Evo events. A lot of times, the very interesting nature of this situation is like last year's Evo in 2014 when when we had what was it, Galileo, who was playing Light Chi, and Dogra, who was playing
Yeah, Leo versus Dog.
yeah, Galileo versus Dogra, who were both playing Light Chi and Azrael. And a lot of the matches, that like the very very good high profile matches, they were very very well executed, very very entertaining. But a lot of the things about those kind of matches is that underneath the entirety of those kind of play styles is a lot of the times we don't see it because we're not there to see what they're executing on their controllers or their fighting sticks or whatever it is that they're using. But a lot of the times they're pressing just as many buttons as possible, even through option selects or whatnot. And uh, some players are blind to the aspect of option selects to the point where some people have this outlook on player skill set as, oh, he's a natural born player, like some known players, maybe like Finrich or SKD, or even like really known good players such as those, or that sort of matter where they're just naturally born gifted players who were just born with the skill sets of a god playing on net play or even like offline tournaments for that matter. But yeah, I feel like the even those kind of players press buttons just as much as any other casual player, but they do it in a more methodical manner that makes sense. Um, yeah, I just find it to be a very interesting nature of mashing overall, and then the core understanding behind that towards how they justify situations in which they just call it smart mashing, like, oh, he just happened to mash a button there and it just happened to work out so well. They stole the whole round from a situation that otherwise they probably could have lost. I mean, who knows, maybe just depending on player respect level, it can be interpreted otherwise. Like, I don't know, but LOL, Lord Knight, in some various situations, if you get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But Seth, do you have any other kinds of
Well,
opinions on this matter?
well, before you move on, Mr. Lathorn, I have a question within the discussion that you were bringing about, and this goes out for anybody who would like to answer, but do you think it's fair to judge what type of mashing people do based on player skill level? For example, we described two different kinds of mashing, which Joe Boy mentioned, one of them being quote unquote smart mashing, and then there's mashing in which people don't even have any intention on what attack they're trying to put out, but they're just mashing. Do you think it's really fair to judge what kind of mashing is involved based on player skill level? Is there really a difference between mashing, or is mashing is just mashing?
Well, that is a very interesting question. For me, like from a non-biased perspective, I feel like if you as a player, competitively speaking here, and this speaks for probably majority amounts of players who are experienced enough to come from this kind of perspective, if you're playing competitively, and let's just say like you know the game in and out, you played this game long enough to understand like what your opponent's options are, where you put them in various scenarios where you have the advantage, whether it be Oki or any kind of scenario in that kind of mannerism. I feel that if your opponent is mashing and they're beating you out of your own setup somehow, or you dropped a combo or something like that. Like, this is excluding situations from net play, because net play is a completely different situation where, you're going to have those hiccups here and there from lag spikes or whatever, not. But I'm talking completely like offline competitive aspect. If you're dropping a combo and your opponent mashed out and you got hit because you dropped your combo, that's kind of on you, because that speaks from your execution perspective. So as a player, that's something pretty much on you. You can't blame your opponent for mashing out of your combo, and then you're the one who's getting hit, and then they stole the round from you. There's nothing you can really do about that except improve your execution skills to be able to finish the combo and win the match that you technically should have won.
Yeah, true.
There's that situation. And then there's the second situation where if you're putting your opponent through a situation where they have an option to mash or to simply not mash and to respect your gameplay, and they're choosing to mash out, and it really really depends on the nature of the setup. But in my opinion, the situation where they're mashing out of very basic situations like just basic mix up or just trying to do a variation of like applying pressure on your opponent, and they're mashing out of whatever you're trying to force on your opponent through an offensive perspective, then it means they're not respecting you as a player. You're not. It's either you're not doing something wrong. You're not doing something right through on an offensive perspective towards them, or they're just simply mashing and you're not controlling them. If you're not giving them incentive to stop mashing, then that means you're not enforcing something correctly on them, at least from a competitive aspect. Unless they're just blatantly mashing and they really, really don't care whether or not a famous player on who's been associated with Blaze Blue and Dustloop and maybe some other fighting games there, but it goes by the name of Akira Shiro. It's one of the most famous quotes in Dustloop where he says something along the lines of that he doesn't really care about if you're plus 213 on block and he's in Oki, he's still swinging. He's gonna mash buttons in your face. He doesn't care. You're not going to earn his respect. Sometimes you just have really obnoxious players like that where they really just don't care about the kind of advantage you put on them. They just relentlessly will be bold enough to just still press buttons in even the most obscure situations. And sometimes you have to understand player psychology like that, where you have to make that judgment and call and just be like, okay, is he going to respect me despite the fact that I baited his DP 2-3 times in a row? I think he's not gonna press DP. This is logical. And then before you know, you got smacked by DP in your face. You know what I'm saying? The fourth time around, when you stop baiting it, sometimes you have to come to a conclusion. Just be like, there are players out there who just will mash till the day they die. It's a live by die hard code for some players, and that's just the reality of it, or whatnot. Some people just simply don't like to block. I mean, we live in America, so I mean, it is the home of non-blocking perspectives. I mean, everyone wants to be a glass can. Why not?
Agree to that one. Very well then.
I mean, I understand that quote. Some people really don't want to. Some people would just rather go out swinging.
Yeah, that is true. That's probably one of my biggest gripes with some players. They just don't know when to quit, like mashing. Like they will just continuously mash. And I understand from that perspective too, because I came from that perspective one time before, where I just had the same mindset. I came from the same mindset where I was just like, me blocking is like asking to lose faster in certain games, like Blaze Blue, for example. Like some people have this mindset where if you're blocking in Blaze Blue, you're losing. Like they just feel like that is just like the ground standard. If you're blocking, you're losing. You're like if you're attacking, you're winning. It doesn't matter if you're putting him on block or you're just applying pressure or just controlling spacing. As long as you're being offensive, you are winning the game. Like that's just the game plan. Like just momentum is such a big factor in certain games like Blaze Blue. Guilty Gear, you can kind of lay back on that because it's more neutral based, so you can really appreciate the nature of methodically breaking down how you play against your opponent. But Blaze Blue, such fast paced games like those, or even like Under Knife, where they can really just decide the nature of the pace of their rounds or whatnot. There are other games where they just move too fast and it's just too momentum based, where you don't have time enough to dissect the nature of the gameplay status quo playing against your opponent, and it really rushes things to the point where it's like if you're blocking, you just feel like you're just losing hope. Even like in games like Marvel, like Capcom versus SNK, maybe perhaps, or even like Marvel versus Capcom 3 or whatnot, like they do the same thing as well, where you just lose so fast. You know what I mean? Like just lose really, really fast, just off of very basic situations. And X Factor is like the counterbalance to that. But even then, it's like you just go by one round, and then before you know it, within the next 7 seconds, like you just see two characters get blown out for free. It's crazy. The momentum is really, really strong in those kind of games, but it really tests you as a player to adapt faster. And some players may have the opinion where adaptation is as much as important as actually just being offensive. Because if you're offensive, you're able to adapt, and perhaps maybe you don't have to block as much as often. As long as you know how to adapt to situations, perhaps you can escape the stigma of blocking. I mean, some people just simply don't like to block. But at the same time, I feel like being fluid as a player does require you to know when to block, because you do have those players who just continuously will bait you all day. And if you're unable to adapt to that, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot competitively, in my opinion.
Fair enough. How do you feel about this situation, Seth?
I pretty much believe that mashing is essential to all fighting games. As in, like I said, like Joe Boy and Listerine says, mashing mindlessly is bad, but mashing to get out of pressure, because if somebody could mash out of your pressure, is it the player who's mashing or is the person who's not doing the pressure screen right? You gotta take that consideration. So losing the mash or complaining about mash is kind of irrelevant, because if you are getting hit by mash, I mean, your pressure had gaps in it. So unless you mash it constantly and then you keep getting counter hit, then you just need to stop and try to mash that same normal. But other than that, I think mashing is a very big part of fighting games in general.
So, from your point of view, you're saying that mashing is actually a part of the game.
Yes, it is.
No, of course. It's a part of the game.
I feel like it's a part of the game, but I feel like for like hardcore competitive players, they feel like it's an unwanted cancer in the game, because they feel like players are just they. It's the nature of how you mash. It's how you're mashing. You know what I mean? Like, because you have some players, they'll sit there and they'll block the very obvious, really testy strings or whatnot. They'll pick and choose their time. They'll say, okay, I'm going to press this button, or, I'm going to chicken block, or this, that, and the other. I'm going to fuzzy jump out of this or whatever. And if I think I can mash a button, I'm just going to press a button maybe 1, 2 times and random places in pressure strings where I think there might be a hole, and see what happens. And then, your two-way just happens to counter hit him out of whatever he was getting ready to do, and then suddenly everyone else who saw the entire situation says, "Oh my God, he's godlike at mashing. He's like, his mashing is S tier. That was smart mashing. That was so smart." And then but then can you really justify that and just say, was the player really just mashing the entire time while they were holding block? Because some games like Blaze Blue where you're under block stun and you're in a situation where you can afford to just continuously press 2A even under block's done, and sometimes the game will just auto block for you because you're under so much pressure. You know.
Yeah, I can see that. I when I usually judge people for how they're mashing, I usually determine how many hits does it take for them to hit confirm. How many two ways does it take for them to hit confirm into a combo? And from my perspective, I feel like if you really knew there was going to be a hole in that pressure, you should really only need one two-way to confirm whether my pressure had a hole in my pressure stream or not. Sometimes you will see people come out the woodworks with 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 two-ways back when it was when it was CS extend, just to try to confirm and hit confirm. And it was like, really, do you really need that many two-ways to confirm hit confirm? So I kind of judge how many times they needed a two-way to confirm the hit confirms to judge whether they was truly just mashing the button or not. Because I feel like if you actually knew there was holes in my pressure and you knew exactly where there were going to be holes at, you should really only need to press 2A one time at the exact moment. Am I correct?
That is true. I feel like for most players, the average form of mashing to confirm that they actually confirm their opponent was usually, I say this very mildly, I say usually two A's, if you know what I mean. Like just using two A's, like one time for counter hitting, and the second time that they realize naturally as a player that their 2A actually hit confirm their opponent. So their second 2A is hitting them to confirm the nature of the fact that they actually hit their opponent out of their own pressure string or whatever it is they were trying to do before they actually convert into an actual combo. Would you say that that's a legitimate form of smart mashing, or just mashing used in the most basic form into converting into an actual combo where their bar is justified from there?
I say that because it needed two ways in order to confirm the combo, that kind of puts it in the area. because at this is a moment where we're talking about the highest level of competitive, which means by expectation, every player that fights the basic characters of the game should know where all their pressure holes are. So to the extent that even you even need two ways to even rectify where obvious pressure holes were, kind of says something in that regard.
Well, what would you say if you see like the very known high level players like Finrich or maybe even like Ryusei, like very good players like Dora, Dara, maybe Galileo. Well, I don't know because Galileo's been out of the Blaze Blue business for a while. He just kind of came back for like a few months, just recently. So he's kind of getting back into the groove. But like really known players like those or like maybe like those kind of players, really strong players, SKD maybe. Like Banana Can, like when they confirm, and you see them use two A's in those same situations, would you still justifiably say that that was still a good call on in those type of situations where they use two A's? Because I watched some matches with Japanese high level play, and I even see them do that sometimes where they're just using two A's multiple times and still convert to a combo. Like even like when you see other players. Like I remember this one particular Izayoi player. I'm not particularly sure of his name at the time. I think it was Rin or something like that. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure. He did a whole bunch of JAs in the air to convert it into a combo. I'm not sure if that's just the nature of Izuyoi's hit confirms in the air in general, but it did like maybe like 4 or 5 JAs before like the person converted it into an actual air combo. Would you still consider that to be still just mashing, or would you just still consider that to be acceptable because of the nature of their reputation as players? Do they get a, you know what I mean? Like, do they get a bypass because their reputation is consistent? You know what I mean, in the competitive environment.
Well, in Izuyo's case, I am aware that some of her combos do require multiple two ways in order to position your opponent in a certain fashion. That way she can get some of her Oki attempts and mix ups and things of that nature. So that can go 50-50. So you'll never truly know in that instance. But let's say for players like Ragnar, where you will be in neutral, right? And he will probably chicken block. And to the extent that he needs to convert a combo in the air, he will just do multiple JAs, and then he'll probably convert it into like a JD into Leo Edge or whatever he wants to finish it off with. That would be, in my opinion, I feel like that was just their obvious attempts at, hey, I'm just gonna run up, mash a button right quick, and if I hit confirm it, cool, I just get the hit confirm. If not, it doesn't really matter unless I get punished for trying this in the first place.
Makes sense.
I mean,
Joe,
there you
any
go.
points?
Seth?
Yeah, yeah. Can I say something real quick? Yeah, like
Yeah.
there you go. But the thing is with that one is you assume like some pressure streams are too fast to react. So it's sometimes better to buffer that move, and sometimes you may see it twice, but sometimes it's just called as in like confirming, as in that oh okay, they, like Littering said, they got the hit confirmed because you don't want to time it right, think it's not going to hit, but not be on the safe side, and then get hit with the normal, then stop the combo. Like for example, I'll give you an example. I'm fighting Joe Boy and he using Bedman. Now when he dashes towards at the projectile, I can 6P it, which is Venom anti-air. But that's a really strict timing. So I'm better off kind of mashing it out instead of just waiting till he doing it hit it. Because if I wait till he does it, 9 to my 10, I'm gonna be not be as fast to punish it before Joe Boy already hit the button. So I'm better off mashing it so I can, even though if it doesn't come out, that means I'm still staying blocked. But if it does come out, that means he did the move. So sometimes when you see that, it's not like they mash it mindlessly. They kind of making sure that they're going to really get the hit off, or they playing it on the safe side. So when you see that, it's not, you can't really necessarily say that they didn't really know what they was doing. They just want to be concerned or confirm that they got that combo.
Well, I can understand your situation because I'm pretty sure 6P, it doesn't have the same Gatling strength. Like I'm pretty sure 6P has a little bit of lag to the move to where you doesn't where he doesn't notice that your character that you're actually inputting 6P multiple times. But when it's a fast gap, when it's a move that Gatling into itself like 2A, you can easily tell how many times the person was pressing that button.
Now, I would say 4 and 5, like three, more than 3 times. I could agree on you on that one, but two, it's kind of just going to be on the safe side. But sometimes you get a person you fight, you make thought of a normal, thinking they're going to block it or it's not, and actually get hit, and you're like, oh, they actually got hit by that. So it's more like, oh, let me just make sure I confirm this combo, so I'm going to do it again.
I can understand that from at least a mid level perspective, but when we're talking about competitive play, do you think there really needs to be questions on what you can punish or not? Shouldn't these kind of players already know the matchup?
Even high levels do that. I mean, it's better to hit the normal again than drop a combo. Even high level players do that sometimes.
I mean, because sometimes the punishes are like actually hitting somebody the right way. It really all depends on where you're both spaced from each other. Like, especially characters like Azrael, because of how plus he is. So, there's some things he could do from long distance crumbing in on you that may be more, that might be less safe than humping your face already. Even though it's the same kind of block string. Actually, it's like, no, actually no, it's reverse that. It's like Azrael doing 5C into 6C. Well, if you're doing that mid-screen, most people say, okay, I'm going to punish it with this. But the thing is that he has several options to go from that. But he has an extra one, which is like 6C. But up and close in your face, no one would ever expect you to do that kind of thing. So you know that they're going to be kind of mashing. Actually, no. Why would they be mashing to get Azure? But they still do it anyway. But, you know, they're going to be trying to mash. They're going to be mashing to get out of 5C. That's much of the move is like negative. It's negative on block. It's not plus.
Okay.
Anyone else have any final comments on the nature of mashing?
Well, no, not really.
I think
All right.
I've said everything.
Okay, so go ahead and shift this topic into something else. Let's talk about something about certain kinds of characters in video games where the opinion of like certain easy mode characters who don't really actually win in competitive tournament environments, but seem to dominate the casual and semi-competitive environments, which will maybe be perhaps net play or even through a casual perspective offline. Like, what is your opinion on those kind of characters where you see certain characters that pop up and people develop an opinion about them being, oh, this character is easy mode, they're easy to, they're easy to learn, they easily win and stuff like that. But then you turn around and you go to competitive environments and you just see them get blown up for free. Like, it's just terrible. Prime examples would be like, let's take like BlazBlue, for example. Very, very easy situation. Let's take Ragna. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of the stigma behind Ragna just being this very derpy character throughout BlazBlue's history of its games, and it's just generally a very solid character. Some people may have various opinions about Ragna just being like this overpowered character. He's too good. His mix up is too good. His DP is too good. Everything about him is just too good in general. But then you turn around and you go to other competitive environments like Japan, or even through like some good some good competitive places with even over here in the western part of the fighting game community, whether it be like Final Round, Evo, or like Winter Brawl, or ECT. It doesn't matter. Some people come to this conclusion where Ragna, yeah, he's a very solid character, but his mix-up is just terrible. I'm pretty sure you've heard like that kind of opinion being said around sometime years ago, where we're saying Ragna is like, he's solid, but his mix-up is just terrible. Like, it's just not that great, competitively speaking. Like, how do you feel about that as coming from a BlazBlue perspective, where Ragna is seen as an easy mode character, where he seems to easily win even in the most casual perspective matches, but then when it comes to competitive places, you don't see him winning a lot of tournaments like Evo or whatnot. Like, last time you seen a Ragna, like, winning a tournament? Like, what was that besides SKD winning back as far as perhaps CS2 or perhaps Blaze Blue Continuous Shift Extend? Like, what is your opinion on that? Like, between easy mode characters who are winning, casually, but then competitively, like they just fade
Nah, I
out.
got
You
you.
know what I mean?
Alright, look at this. It's like for the most part, most of these easy mode characters are usually like I would say like the cover, like the poster boy and stuff like that. Ragnar is a poster boy. He's a character that usually when you look at he's on the case, whatever, like a character to sell Blaze Blue. So just by that, when a lot of people pick the game, they're probably going to go by home naturally because he's the main character. And just because a lot of people play him, and I mean, like, if let's be fair, like online, it's not really full of a whole bunch of real high level people all over the place that probably play Ragnar or something like that. Ragnar, the problem with Ragnar is that a lot of people play him, but it doesn't mean a lot of really good people play him. Just because there's a lot of people playing your character, and that character is known to be really good, but a lot of them lose major tourneys or whatever. That doesn't mean that you know that's actually more of the player's fault. Yeah, they know how to play him, but they don't actually have the full grasp of how to use the character in high level, how to apply his tools against other characters, and how to apply that to his matchups. They aren't really too well versed with stuff like that. Do you agree?
I would consent to that.
I can definitely agree with that. I also can I also want to mention that because of the natural latency that online has from at least 2 to maybe even 4 frames difference between online and offline, that I feel like sometimes the tier list that goes on offline should actually be differed towards online play, because some characters may seem too good or even a lot better due to latencies like that, because the frames of online are inconsistent.
True. True.
True.
And also I'd like to add too that the more people use the character, the more people understand the matchup. If
Ah,
you Ragnar is a base people, so if a lot of people playing Ragnar, when tournaments come, everybody know how to fight him. So besides characters like Carl and Hazama, who's way more a little bit more complex, not played as much. It would have various matchup, while Ragnar is, like I said, straightforward, and a lot of people know how to deal with Ragnar.
I can agree with that. Let's take a look at Valkenheim. Like, nobody plays with Valkenheim really. Like maybe 1% out of the entire community is Valkenheim players. So every time you see a Valkenheim in a tournament, most Valkenheims place very high in tournaments due to people's lack of knowledge about that character, and also he's just very hard to block.
yeah, not enough people are eating, getting eaten up by them 50-50s in the corner all day. If you dealt with it more, you'd probably be able to block it better. But if a Valkahine sneak up on you in a tournament, and he fought a lot of Ragnars in his day, that's not gonna be good for you. But that's just usually how technical characters are in the first place. Not that much people play those kind of characters. Characters like Ragnar usually get played more because of its easy execution and because of its accessibility, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I agree. Anyone else have any further comments on the subject matter?
Nope,
Just
that'll be all.
Nope.
anything else?
Nope.
No, that'll be it. Alrighty then. All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper into the same subject matter. Let's say what is defined as skills behind a character who is hard to play but is easy to win with versus a character who is easy to learn but harder to win with competitively. Like, what does your opinion matter on that?
Cool. Well, I think that some hard characters, I have a bit of a dilemma about it. It's like, yeah, a hard character should have their job lightened because they have a high execution barrier. So when you fight them, you're just going to have more difficulty with that because I guess I see that as the reward for playing such a character that's technical. Um, I understand. I agree with that. It's just for some people they may think it's a little on the unfair side because then you could get characters that may really be out of control, like a little out of control on the balance side, and then it just slap. Oh, but he's a hard character though. You know that's where the problem arises. To be honest.
Check. I definitely agree with that. Prime example: continuous shift extend Arcune.
Oh man.
I actually had the nerve to attempt training mode with that character, and I have learned that doing his curse combos are actually pretty hard. Like that's not something you can just jump into. You can't try to do Ragnar's combos, but at the same time, you get just for doing that combo once, you basically kill every character in the game. I've even seen a case where Tager, even Tager with 13,000 HP was eaten alive by one curse combo.
Just another day.
Wow. And Tiger has 1,300 life. 1,300.
13,000.
Yeah, 13,000. Yeah, there you go.
And,
13,000.
and continuous shift extend Arcune basically one shot at that man.
That's crazy. How do you feel about characters who have very explosive damage like that? Do you think they're fair in the game where life points are they variously are different depending on the nature of the archetype of the character in general? Like, say for example, do you feel like matchups such as like Arcune versus Carl is fair enough, where Arcune's explosive damage that does over 7k easily, and older variations of Blaze Blue versus a character like Carl who only has 9,000 life? Like, how do you justify that situation? Like, how do you feel about that?
If from my perspective, I do feel like that HP and ability should kind of go into a balance. For example, if you have less than 10,000 health, you better be hard to catch. Prime example, Tao Kaka. She has like 3 jumps and 2 air dashes. And then we have characters like we have quite a few characters with 10,000 health, mainly some of the zoners such as V13 and U12. They kind of have things that kind of keep you away. They usually those kind of characters have more defensive values to them, but going back to the Carl subject, Carl Carl, from my perspective, hasn't really been that good of a character throughout most of the games. He's probably been good in like maybe two or three patches of the game, and for him to have such low health compared to how hard it is to actually control Ada sometimes, which requires a different play style from the character. I mean, a different play style from the player. Sometimes the balance can. Sometimes the balance doesn't seem justifiable for how hard he is to play.
I had to say something about that. When it comes to Carl, I think the balance is perfectly fine because Ada takes a lot of hits from Carl. And when it comes to Arakune and Carl matchup, if you place Ada right, Ada blocks every last bug of Arakune. Like one of the big important bugs, like the big bug and stuff like that. Now, I say Carl health is justified solely because Carl is hard to hit. Ada protection for most of the time. And pretty much it because if you have Carl with like high ass health, how would that how would that function? As in, it would be really unbalanced. Like a character like Tager, who's more the type of person who's going to get hit because most normal is going to get beat out or something like that. He has high health. While characters like Ragnar, Carl, like Tao Conquer, they really hard to punish. But when you do punish them, they take the hit. So I say Blaze Blue. To be honest, I think the health balance is pretty fair in that department. Because each character who has low health, they have a reason to kind of bypass the hit market.
Yeah, because it doesn't really look at like exactly the balance for the game. It's more like it's like what the characters are supposed to be on paper too. Like of course like a character like Carl should really have low health. That's a balancing him because he has Nirvana, which is supposed to absorb damage from him, and how Kaka has a lot of movement options. He's hard to punish. I pretty much agree with that. I
Uh,
don't really see. I think the health balance. I think the health balance of most of the characters in Blaze Blue are pretty fair. It really makes sense for certain those characters to have low health.
all right. So let's reshift back to the same subject matter as far as back with skills with certain characters. How do you, as a player who's played the game, play any kind of fighting game long enough to understand what kind of fundamental skill set you're looking for to define how good a player is? Like, how would you say? How do you find the fundamental skill assets behind a player who's playing certain kinds of characters? Like, for example, like how do you see the skill sets as a player who is using a very strong character, such as let's use like Blaze Blue's example, like maybe someone back in 1.1 at the time, maybe like Kokinoi's status was like considered to be triple S tier, who was like completely broken, just very overpowered. Someone who's using a very strong character like Falconheim, or even right now in CP Extend, New 13, who was projected to be completely S tier. How do you find the skill sets behind those kind of characters, like as a player? And how do you also find the same skills with someone who's playing an easier character, who's fighting perhaps against a stronger A tier or S tier character? Like, how would you define those kind of skill sets? Like, what are you looking for? How do you handpick those things out of players?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I,
That's. You like to say this something, Joe?
well, I was just gonna say that that's the interesting one because that is true. Characters like Kokanoe, she wasn't really a difficult character at all, but she's also really S tier. She had good skills. Me, I think that the skill of the player, yeah, the person still has some skill to the degree, but I I just have to say it here. I think sometimes the character does a good amount of work for you because Kokanoe was never really that kind of character that had really hard neutrals or or even really hard combos for that matter. She had really I want to say like it wasn't like Robnik even, but it was on the lower end of the difficulty side to do a lot of the things she could do. On top of the fact that she was really strong and she had a lot of matchups in her favor. But if we talk, oh wait, I'm thinking my 1.0.
But we could talk about that as well. We're just considering all nature aspects of like character strengths in
One
general.
point 1.1 was overall that kind of similar. She was still really strong. She was like S tier. She was like S plus, right?
She was like, what was she like considered triple S, double S at least?
And 1.1.
1.1. She was considered like if you're just talking through basic tier list formalities, you would consider she would be like very top tier S character. If you want to talk about characters who came very strong behind her, you could say like Valkheim was considered like the lower end spectrum of the S tier
No, no, it was like
list.
Valkaheim and Asriel. But like
Yeah,
you get a lot of
but
flack for that.
yeah, a lot of people would like try to separate Kokonoi from the character because they consider them to be even stronger
She was on another
than
level.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's why they came up with the whole double S tier or triple S tier kind of thing for her specifically. She was such a strong character.
Yeah. But yeah, like characters like that, I kind of do think that I really do think that the character itself really helps you. Like if you're probably not that good at reading others, hey, you pick a character that has over the top or top of the line set play on lockdown, like Kokono, and it can really cover for some of the flaws you may have. Wait, how high was your HP? I do not remember. I think it was like
Maybe 1100. I mean
1100.
11,000.
I think it was equivalent to Jen's health, which is
Yeah,
See,
it was about 11,000. just about, if
Her
I
health
remember
was not
correctly.
balanced. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awfully more on the base average, which was around 11,000. Considered below that was like 10,000, which is like the health level for like people like Rana and Valkenhayn. But base was like 11,000 if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay.
But even then, even in her case, I felt like her health was still a bit too high by 1,000 points for her general strength as a character back then, as it is now in CP Extend. Before the introduction of Central Fiction comes out within probably about a year from now, I feel like her health it's a bit more justifiable. She did take the nerf bat a bit more. She's still a pretty good character. She's a pretty strong character in my opinion. She has most of her tools. She may not do as much damage, but a lot of her effectiveness as a character is justifiable for 11,000 at least in my opinion. She's pretty solid.
Yeah. What do you think, Jacob?
I feel like that this conversation brings up another question I've been meaning to ask, and that's is considering each character's tools are the same, but yet they use them differently as far as hitboxes are concerned. Do you think are do you think that because most players choose to main a certain character, that it's pretty is it safe to judge that player based on how based on their skill set on how they can use that character's skill skill set? And what I'm saying is, let's say we, for example, look at Nine Ball, and he mains rack. So is it pretty safe to say that he is very well adept on how to use Ragnar's abilities? Like, is he very good at using Ragnar's tools?
Yeah, she's very good at using rock.
So is it safe? So is it a safe assumption to judge his skill set based on how good is he using the character that he mains tools?
Yeah, you could judge them on how he uses rock.
I would say so. The only exception is referring to players who play multiple characters for that matter, because you do have some players who play more than just one character, and they do have those subs where they do express their own skill sets for those characters. Now, it can still be generally understood that even with those characters, they may not be as strong as their mains, in terms of their own personal player performance in general, where you still see their core fundamental aspects of skills as a player, whether it's blocking or adaptation, or just choosing the right time when to press a button, or DP, or making certain decision making skills, when to anti-air, when to space, when to bait, stuff like that of that certain matter. And like, if you can still see that, even though they're not playing their main, they're using like a different character, then I feel like that speaks loudly of the character's, base, skill set as a player. It makes them a strong player. It's a clear representation of their strength as a player, as opposed to just where you're playing two different characters. You play your main, you're really strong, but then you play some other character and you're just completely just garbage. You're just not as strong as you were before. You're twice as easy to get over, but then you suddenly switch to your main, and then you're just on top of the mountain again. Like, how do you justify that? Like, what is the stigma behind that? What's your opinion?
Well, and from that perspective, I see that some people it's one of those things to where skill is trainable, but everybody doesn't have the same skill to train. Let's say let's say not everybody may be as good as maybe as myself and Akira Shiro, to where we can just pick up like 10 different characters and they all be at a reasonably good amount of level, to the point that where we can show off players. And some people choose to say, I feel like I don't need to play that many characters. I just pick my favorites, and I feel like I just want to show off my skill level with just the characters that I like to play. If instead of just choosing a lot of other characters, how would we feel about that?
I don't
Hmm.
believe. I really don't believe that. I think if that is true, very few people can actually play with all those characters high level. Because if you really think about it logically, if I'm sitting down and using 8 characters, 9 characters, yeah, I may fight people online and not beat them. But in order for me to really believe that they're really highly skilled with all those characters, I need to see them win like a tournament with every individual character. Then I say, okay, cool, that kind of thing. Because I mean, like let's look at Blaze Blue. How much characters in C2 extend? About 27, right? Somewhere around there, right?
Well, Rounder.
Yeah.
So okay, 27 characters, right? Say if you say like, oh, I'm really high level with 12 characters, right?
Hmm.
Think about it. With each one of those 12 characters is 27 matchups. So you're trying to tell me that you actually good enough to like know what like 300-400 something matchups and be sharp in every last one of them. Like I could just say, okay, pick Relius, and then you fight me Relius, and with every character that like I want to see you fight a high level person with all their like 27 people and see you run through all of them with your Relius, and then with your whatever, then with your, like with all of your 12 characters. It's not like even Nine Ball. I see him. Yeah, who is? I know Nine Ball plays Gen, but does he play anybody else other than Gen? I know before he used to
I
play as
do know
well.
he plays Jin. He sometimes messes with Azrael, occasionally.
Asriel,
Yeah.
Yes, I actually seen his card. It was Ragnar Jin Azrael.
this guy play
But
Asriel.
but to be fair, when you actually looked at how many times he picked Azrael in comparison, his Azrael hasn't even reached the 3-digit marks, and but Ragnar and Jin are well past over 400.
I can't play him now. He probably gonna marry me this
He doesn't,
weekend.
he doesn't play Azrael like that.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I don't but okay, that's like the reason. Yeah, I know. Also, I know he played Elpit during the day, but he lost. But as far as I can see, and some other people, I don't really know that much people who could play that many characters at a high level. The only person I do know is Zero from Super Smash Brothers, but I haven't really seen that happen in other games. To be honest, have any of you seen that?
Well, when I was getting better at Blaze Blue, the only two people I've ever came across that played various multiple characters and was consistent in terms of playing decently with all of them pretty well with like Jago and in this podcast and also Akira Show in the past. Even to this day, I still think he plays the most of the cash pretty well whatnot. Some characters that he does play, it's a bit off. It's not as prevalent as other characters that he's familiar with. Like I would still say some of his core characters that he's been pretty consistent with is like Me12, maybe even Lychee, Carl, which Carl is technically his main, but he does play every other character in the game as well. But the most I've ever seen him consistently play on a basis is Lychee. Like I said before, Lychee, B12. Uh, he does mess around with Noel every once in a blue moon. That does happen. Relius, he does mess around with him as well. Those were the ones I normally see him with the most. He does occasionally mess around with Jin every here and there as well, but not too often. And every once in a in that phase, he'll probably pick Rana, but he very rarely ever touches Rana or very other characters like that unless he just feels like it on some random day. But we have seen him at least play all the other characters at some point. But there comes a point in time where he just normally sticks to the main ones that he usually focuses on are the ones that I've mentioned before.
Okay, so it's only like a little handful of characters for the most part. I don't want to downplay him too much, but I mean, even he himself say he's not like top notch or something like that. See, that's more what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking of like the mastery. I'm talking about a mastery of several characters at once. Like you go fight somebody Dogra 9 ball SKD level or something, right? And then they switch characters. They have like 8 other characters in you, and they all play at that same level. Because I think some people do like they may do that, but they just abuse character elements and they abuse player matchups. That's what I think people do when they say they could play a whole bunch of characters like that. I think they just abuse really PvP and the person's like knowledge of fighting against that character. So okay, I play Valkahorn. Instead of actually playing matchup, I know I see you can't block overheads. I'm gonna hit you with a whole bunch of overheads. I win. I could play Valkahorn instead. I know it's no excuse because the person should be good. That's why I think it's a better assumption to actually see them fight against somebody that knows the matchup well. Then I can actually give it to them. But if they fight somebody that barely ever fight the character, it's kind of weird, really, to be honest. Like Jago, for example, when you used to fight me with Bullet, I used to lose your Bullet. The thing is that I barely ever fought the character, so I was really bad at the matchup. So, I mean, on top of the fact I'm not the greatest player in the world either, but I was really bad at the matchup. So I'm not. You did have a good bullet, but and you beat me with her, right? But the thing, it was a true fact. I don't know. I'm not really good at countering her normals or reading the matchup like that with Asriel because I barely fight the character. You know, that's more of what I'm talking about. But actually fight. Say if you'd have fought Dogra with your bullet and see how you fare against them. That's what I'm talking about. Actually, then I call that skill at that point. If you can take down people that really know your character with several characters, that's awesome, man. That's excellent. But I haven't seen it that much. I really haven't. And if somebody could do it, it's like only with what? I mean, even Akira Shiro. Like Akira Shiro be going to 9 ball rooms using his characters, and he loses all of them.
You
I've
only
seen
know
it
what they
before.
say. You, handyman, good at all, mastery of none.
Exactly.
All right.
I'm not pulling no shots, Diego. I'm not pulling no shots on you, man. But cause I mean your man is D12 anyway, so
I'm,
you can't really.
I'm happy like before before extend CP extend came out. I only had maybe 4 core characters that I was mainly good at, and that was Mu 12, Hakumen, Azrael, and maybe Kagura. Like that was my main 4 that I was actually always some at there was no point where I was not training with those characters. So I will call those 4 my top 4 characters.
Okay, see that's a fair amount though, because it's like 4. You know, that's. I'm not trying to say that. I mean, yeah, it still be hard to master them, but it's not. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that it's believable that you can do that. Can everybody do that? I don't think so. Some people they really struggle playing their own character, like me. But
like I said, I think it's a really good phrase. You can skill is trainable. You can maintain how good you are at something, but everybody doesn't have the skill to train. Some people don't know how to get better. There's a lot of people who struggle at that, and it's not. And I can't say it's normal for you not to struggle, like because some people just got gifts like that. Some people just come out the woodworks and they already know how to play the game.
true, true, that does happen. Some people are just naturally talented. Maybe that's in sports too. That is important too.
So it's not. It's so training is not. It's not an easy task. Not everybody can train.
But I see what you're saying right here, and the way I see it as like not everybody has to train. I think is not everybody have like the ability to pay attention to the details of the training, right? Like to be more clear on that one, because it's like yes, I know I need to train, but I don't realize like some people don't realize what they aren't excelling in, and they train and they don't touch the areas that they know they're bad in.
Okay.
That happens a lot.
Okay. I can clarify that. When I say people don't know how to train, let's say you had matchup issues with. Let's go with Ragnar. Since a lot of people, so there's a lot of people who have problems fighting Ragnar, and at the same time, there's a lot of people who already know how to fight Ragnar but still don't like fighting him. So let's try the approach of you don't know how to fight Ragnar, and you've always been losing to Ragnar, and the person who plays Ragnar always telling you to, in a positive manner or in a negative manner, to basically just get better. You need to train some more, right? From my perspective, when it's time to go into that lab, what you should do is you whip out the internet and you go straight to Ragnar's frameworks and you see all of his moves. And what you do is you go to training mode. The first thing you want to do is record that character's pressure string. You can look them up online and on Duskloop, and they'll tell you what Ragnar's general's pressure strings are. And you can use the training mode dummy to record those pressure strings, and then you can test out openings with your character. That you can learn matchups without actually relying on player versus player knowledge to try to learn the character in that perspective. This is part. This is just part of what I mean by learning how to train. It's not Training isn't always about just learning combos. You can actually test frame.
You know what? You actually really reminded me of something too that it's about training. What if for some people that might be too much? They may not have enough time on their hand. That let's say I wanted like for example, okay, for example, I want to get good at Blaze Blue, right? But I work I don't know so many hours with her, but I still want to attend tournaments. But I do not have the time to sit down and actually read or go over the framework and fight and train a lot. I don't. I just simply don't have the time for that. So it makes you think this, right? I'm gonna lead this into another topic too. It's interesting. Do you think fighting games should be easier when it comes to actually learning the execution stuff for the game? Because for the most part, that person mainly, yeah, he read the matchups and stuff like that, right? But if you have the thinking and all that down pat, you can do a lot of things. It's just that some characters may have too much options. What if it's like more simplified and more like rock paper scissors? I know it sounds bad, but just hear me out for a second. You notice how some games has been getting easier over time, right?
Hmm.
Because and why do you think that they wanted to make it more? Let's get straight into the player versus player experience, right? Instead of matchup execution and then player versus player when we aren't playing the matchup the way it should be, right? That's correct.
Right.
Okay, correct.
So, how do you feel about that? It's like, do you think it should be easier to learn all those things like real fast? Should fighting games get slower so you could see things coming faster?
Uh, I feel like
I don't think they should be
I don't think to be slower, but the thing is, for me, from my perspective, I'm sorry to cut you off, Jago, my bad,
Yeah.
but I feel like as a person who's been playing fighting game for over 13 years, I mean, I've been playing fighting games since the mid 1990s at the very least. Um, where we came from an era where fighting games was inherently slower compared to the modern day variation of fighting games. Where back then we considered that to be hard stuff. Where we came from Street Fighter, the earlier variations of Mortal Kombat and saying Capcom games, saying Killer Instinct, Virtual Fighter, all these other stuff like that, Tekken, you name it. Saying these games were inherently superiorly slower than their counterparts are today, where they're just much faster. It's much fast paced. Everything's fast paced. Saying these days where, you only have less than 20 seconds on the clock before you realize a round is already over these days, and most of these up to date games, where back then it was a lot slower. It's a lot slower. People move slower. They did a whole bunch of walking instead of running. Moves came out slower. Look at the first Mortal Kombat that came out. Can you tell me how slow most of the moves are in the game? Like the fastest move in the game was probably Liu Kang's flying kick, and that was just barely scratching anywhere near fast compared to today's moves. You know what I mean? I just feel like if you're a fighting gamer and you came from that era of like the earlier renditions of fighting games, and you compare it to now today's variations of fighting games, I feel like, I mean, evolution just takes over your experience of fighting games, where you're just gonna have to start adapting to faster variations of things that just was already slow in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like if you came from a generation where you started playing fighting games around anywhere between 2008 all the way up to this point, then you kind of came to an unfortunate part of the fighting game revolution where everything is just so fast. And I feel like that's the part of the community that's suffering the most, because these are the kind of players that are coming into the game. They don't understand what's going on. They don't have a sense of direction of what they need to do, in fighting games. How do they adapt? They're completely new to the concept of just moving with everything in such a fast-paced environment, and they suffer the most from it because these are the kind of guys you run into on net play or just in casual settings that just get dominated. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they take away from the competitive aspect of the game, and at the same time, these are your players who are suffering, and they just give the community a bad name in a sense at the end of the day, because these are the guys who are trying to learn how to just get into the groove of things. And then if you never give them the chance, I mean, the community itself just suffers as a consequence. Because these are the kind of guys. I mean, who would have known that maybe that one player you bodied sometime last week on a random Tuesday could have been like the next Finrich? Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, we lose out. We lose out on a competitive, you know, elevation and competitive innovation of players because of those
Well,
reasons. Because they just don't have that experience, or they don't have that leading person to, tell them how to adapt. You know what I mean?
There's a flip side to that, to your point with the rain, and that point falls within the reasons why people play fighting games to begin with. Some people some people simply play fighting games because they have something to prove when they beat somebody. Some people just don't like fighting games in general because they don't like the sense of competition they have to feel, that they have to deal with when they lose to somebody else. And like some people like to quote unquote troll just to piss people off when they play fighting games, so that kind of dictates how people play the game in general. And about the innovation within players, I feel like before we can fix the innovation about players, the developers have to fix the innovation in how they balance the game. For example, the between the iterations of extend of CP extend and CP 1.1, the innovation that happened to Mu 12 was so drastic that it basically screwed everybody who used to learn Mu 12 and said, you know what, you basically had everything you knew about the character has been thrown out the window. It's time for you to hit the scrapbooks, and you had to start all over, which means now it's like starting over on something that you've been on knowledge that you've been stacking up for years. So and now instead of being able to teach new people about how to use characters who virtually never changed since the day she came out. Now you're back in competition, back just to even try to relearn your character again.
That's another issue in itself, too.
Because I
It's
feel like all of this adds up in why people think
can't
the
stick.
way they do.
Yeah, it's so hard to master. Wait, I'm sorry. Who was that, Seth? Or
Uh,
thought
others,
somebody said something.
oh,
But I mean, cause I lost train of thought for a second. But yeah, yeah, that's the problem for the most part. Cause some people they actually train, memorize how their tools work with some combos, right? So they want to build up on that and just keep playing and learning and growing from there. And then another game come out, another fighting game come out, and then they just change, either completely change their character or really heavily alter them. So it feels like they got to go back to square one. And I think they only do that because it's a fighting game, really, and they just gotta like sell money. And they think they can't sell the game if it doesn't have a rebalance to it. Some people, I mean, but for some new players, that may be like added more fun for them, so they can actually go out and try. And for some people, they can actually use that like to explore the game more, explore newer things that they could do with their character. I mean, yes, it is needed for sometimes because some characters aren't that good and they need to be buffed. Some characters are too good and they need to be nerfed. But changes like Move 12, that's a bit too much. It's like taking Ragna and then oh, I know that's too extreme. I'm gonna say it anyway. It's a little funny. It's like taking Ragna and making him into like a zoner or something like that. But I mean her change wasn't that extreme, was it, Jacob?
well, on top of just completely nerfing her from her basic Gatlin, which was 5C, 6C. She had that was bread and butter she had since day one. It's completely taken away, forcing you to utilize other options that sometimes didn't even make sense. I mean, sure, she could cancel every Gatlin into a Stein and then cancel her Stein into other Gatlins. That was fine and dandy. But now, because all these other Gatlins exist without the use of 5C, 6C, a lot of things didn't make sense anymore. From at face value, they didn't make sense anymore.
Okay, I understand you saying that now. That's just straight up changing the character at that point. It's like there's nothing you can really. They clip Mori and Hachi, the developers, and clearly thought that she needed to have her design change, or her main game focus altered. I mean, yes, she still had the long normals with lasers, but it's not the same as what it used to be. And that can really throw off players, because what if you're someone that has a slow learning speed, and then next game, now your character is completely different, and then while you trying to learn that character, they get a patch, and now your character changes up again. Do you think that actually halts the progress of some people? Or why they some people that's actually still not that good yet because of the fact that they have to learn their character a lot. And I'm not talking about the people. I'm not really talking about the people that you can clearly see they can adapt to the changes.
That's
I
true.
th-
And I wanna add something for a sec. It wasn't that Mu 12. She didn't completely lose the Gatlin itself. She could still do 5C, 6C. But when it was time to actually get a hit confirm it was no longer a reliable Gatlin.
Okay, that's what you mean. All right.
yeah, I feel like the fact that the game state changes, and the nature of how characters functionalities already been set on a certain game iteration that have been changed on the next one. It does hinder some players learning aspects about the character and how they understand the character a certain way, how they should function. Because with each change to a character, sometimes their functionality always also may change in the same nature. Like for example, some characters like you could take me 12 for example, even in the same sense, where she was more. I felt like back in CS2, she was more like set play zoning aspect. Like she wasn't more offensive in terms of like being all in your face kind of deal. In my opinion, not as much. Into CS Extend, I felt like she gravitated more towards being a little bit more in your face, but because her Steiner formations allowed that to happen. So her gameplay generally remained the same. It was just stronger, in my opinion.
In CS2, she was a guard break queen.
Yeah, she was guard break queen. Like her entire gameplay was just like her game plan was just okay. Like your basic game plan, you know what I'm saying? Just set up a lot of steins that makes into formations that make sense. Open your opponent up into situations where you get him into her Habakiri Oki and just guard break them to death. Where to the point where it's able to bait reversal options, but also allow you to put it into a very favorable position where you're also able to guard break them. And as long as that's the case, she did massive damage on guard break. It was amazing damage. It was like over 5 to 7K potential. Very strong, very 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 strong. And then just over into CP, it just changed because the game status quo had changed. It no longer had guard points. You know what I'm saying? It had no guard primers anymore. Like everything was different. And with that being the case, like her entire Steiner explosion special, it no longer had much of a use to it. The amount of hits it did, you know what I'm saying, on regular. Like I remember back in the day, it did like 3 hits automatically with no charge whatsoever. You just did a Steiner explosion on one Steiner, it hit 3 times automatically. It was legitimate Oki. There's nothing you could do about it. And then coming into CP, they nerfed it to 1 hit, and you have to charge the Habakiri special just to make it hit 3 times, and it just makes the whole entire Oki less effective in certain situations. So it definitely changed the nature of like how she's perceived to work. Like her Oki's just not as strong, and then her Oki being nerfed furthermore when it came to 1.1 and then extend, CP extend for that matter. Just very different. Like her entire gameplay strategy is just it changed. It no longer was about breaking someone's guard. It became about something completely different, even from an outside perspective where I don't even play the character. I didn't even understand what she was supposed to do. And then that was when me and Jago were having a discussion. We were just like, well, I was just like, man, I don't know what the character does anymore. Like maybe they want the character to be a punish character. You know what I mean? Like I just said, well, what if she's a punish character? Maybe she's supposed to just set up Steiner formations, bait your opponent to do certain kind of reactions based on her Steiner formations, and then essentially punish them. Kind of like setting up zoning to force your opponent to do something bad, like a set play kind of deal, like how Lai Chi does it. But then like punish your opponent through neutral aspect, kind of like how Rana does. But you're doing this through Me 12. It's kind of like combining 2 play styles together to kind of make sense of a character. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like just changing the nature of how she functions.
Yeah, I understand that. I get completely what you're saying.
Yeah, like I felt like that was how they were trying to change Me 12. Like it's just, I guess maybe they were like, they thought her zoning was just too strong. You know what I'm saying? It was just too strong. They were trying to make a different sense of it, so they replaced it completely with something different. I just feel like now NCP Extend is just not as good. They just nerfed it to a point where it's not as effective as it was before. I mean, granted, her new combos do seem to do pretty good damage, like good high 3K, maybe 4K combos in certain scenarios or whatnot, but her Oki is just non-existent anymore, pretty much. Positioning is very different. It's very difficult, in my opinion, to just tell exactly what you're supposed to do Me 12 in various situations now. It's very, very different from her earlier iterations and counterparts of herself. So I do say in regards to that it, characters changing over time through each iteration does hinder the process of understanding a character and just learning them in general, because someone could come from the past who played past iterations of said character and say, okay, this is how the character is supposed to work, and then they come to this new game and they're like, wait, the character doesn't function this way. I don't even understand what this character does anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so different.
Yeah, because it's like even like if you look at other competitive things like sports, well, I mean, yeah, even League of Legends is also the same way. That's competitive. People who see that game get changed a lot. Also competitive like fighting games, but it makes you think like stuff. Look at stuff like this, like basketball, right? Playing basketball, football, whatever. You at any time you can just go in, like even at a young age, and you play, you learn the fundamentals of it, and you play it. But it's not like next year you play basketball plus R or basketball extended when the rules of the game naturally changes. And I'm equating the rules of the game as in the rules for said character and how they function out there in the field. So that automatically puts people back in that learning process as in, get the game time to learn again, kind of thing. And I think that's a way. And I think that's a way. I just think they do that to make games last longer. And in my opinion, that's a little sad because it's like if you got a game like Blaze Blue comes fast time to extend, right? If the game is really good, you really say it's about any game, really Guilty Gear, Sir, whatever. If the game is really good, right? Then how
Hmm.
come the game can't still be getting played 5 years later without no balance updates or nothing like that? Just playing the game as it is because and that's the problem. It's like, and that's really the problem there, and that's why most people, the newer players, got to go back and relearn shit because nobody will really keep playing these same games the same over the period of 5 years. That's just my opinion. I don't think people. I think people who need this in a way it's bad, yeah, because you got to keep relearning shit. But I think some people need this because games start dying off after a while with no balance changes. I think people get bored. I think people get bored after a while. Do you agree with that or not?
Yeah, I feel like people do get bored after a while. It's natural. We're in a time, we're in a kind of new generation of the fighting game community where a lot of times, when a new fighting game comes out, it's expected to live at least about a year and a half before it dies. At least that's being generous in terms of its lifespan, its natural lifespan for that matter. I mean, lately, I feel like almost every 8 months, some new game comes out and it just dominates what just came out like prior. You know what I mean? Like it's been crazy. Like I remember when Persona 4 first came out with when it came to Persona 4 Ultimax, like the second one that came out, was it?
Yeah, Persona 4 Ultimate.
Yeah, Persona 4 Ultimax came out. It was cool, what I'm saying? It kind of took the scene away from Under Night Ember for a minute.
You're forgetting about how that game died on release.
Yeah, it was crazy because it was like it was relevant for a bit, and then suddenly Guilty Gear XR came around the corner, and it just completely took everyone from Persona 4 Ultimax, and then suddenly the game just died. Like it just flatlined within less than a month and a half to 2 months for out of nowhere.
It's like the same people are switching through games. So that means that we got the anime fighting game community, 100%, right? 70%. The 70% of people who switch, and that 10% goes to each game that still stays. That's like the ratio. It's really bad. We just need more players, to be honest. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I think if it was big enough, even a percent difference of people switching over wouldn't be that great. Because then you would have more people. If there's more people, players all around, there'll be more people sticking to each game. But since there's not as much, people that sticking to each game don't outweigh the people who switch games just because it's the next thing. So that's how trends work. Things are just trendy, and they go out of style pretty fast.
True.
Not not to mention because I'm mainly calling out Arc System Works here. That Arc System Works tends to have a pattern with how they advertise their games and how they present their existing games, in which it conditions players to always expect the next iteration of the game instead of focusing on the one that's already out.
Oh, you mean like how Guilty Gear Revelator is coming out the 23rd on the same week that his Blaze Blue location test?
Exactly.
Or do you mean like how the game is releasing on the 23rd and Blaze Blue releasing next season? I mean, it's true. They
I
like,
I I was looking on Google when I typed in Blaze Blue Chrono Fiction, and I actually got something random. I got something random about the Arc System's grief cycle. It actually shows a circle on the complete cycle of how Arc System Works treat their fans. This, and this is exactly what
Wow.
and this is exactly what it said, right? From in order. The after the announcement of the game releases in Japan arcade. Everybody gets hyped, but there's massive console delay every time. The game finally releases on console after like a year. Everybody gets salty over all the top tier characters. After exactly 2 weeks and 2 months, we finally get a patch. But then new version of the game is announced via Extend or Revelations.
this ain't church.
People who are salty about top tier characters hope that their characters somehow get better. Right when the new game comes out, they announce a completely new iteration of the game. So now everybody wants the new game instead of focusing on the new patch of the game.
Sounds about right.
Blaze Gear Extend plus R. That's a
Yeah.
new game coming out.
The truth
that
hurts.
that cycle is real. There's nothing wrong with that. That's mainly because most of the that's mainly because Arc System Works mainly care about the arcades and the competitive environment arcades. That's like their first customer. They think about them before a console. We get that later after they're done making a story that some people don't even want. They just want to play the game, but you gotta have the story.
Yeah,
Then they release it. It just they gotta build up that money, that arcade money, because when they release the game on consoles, some people may not want to play it in arcades anymore. It might start dying down, and then when they release the next game, it's on arcades. That's why I say like the best way to play fighting games. It seems like it is in arcades, because when you play the arcade, you don't have to wait for that delay or nothing like that. It's just the game come out, you go play it whenever you have the chance. I mean, you may have to wait in line, but you guys like to share everything.
well, when you actually think about it, we all actually get the same amount of time between our games.
Yeah,
It's just that because we it's just that because most people like to research what's in Japan a lot. It make us feel like we already have it when we don't.
yeah. If we just focused on the games we got for the console when it came out, instead of worrying about, oh no, your Revelations is out or Blaze Blue Central Fiction, and just worry about and compete in the game that's out currently, this wouldn't happen. But I think this really started because of the fact that we have the internet now, and we can just easily search up what's going on. What new games out, and you will come across that, especially if you're on Dusty.
Yep.
And not to mention, it could bring in new fans for the new characters too. And then you have people that's just waiting on that game to come out, but then when they get the game, they got to get the extend version. Like to they announce the extend version, then they may feel gypped after that. Like I just bought this game, but I mean, if you look at it, you can still play that game or compete and go do everything you want to do, like tournaments and all that stuff. That's not stopping. It's just that we're not as up to date as Japan, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why they always body us too. They do got a head start
I agree to that.
because they about to what? They're about to get Guilty Gear Revelator like on Monday, right? And when that game come out in America and it's a tournament for the Japanese player come over, they had the game since August, September, October, November, December, all the way up until whenever the game. Cause the game probably ain't coming out to like March, April. I mean, obviously there's no actual date for it, but I'm just guessing if it's a console version, probably gonna be around March, April-ish kind of thing. And that's already several months that they have ahead that you gotta go and learn the characters or whatever, and then compete against them.
Hmm.
That can be a bit rough sometimes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't. I just want to say, what happened? For the most part, yeah, I think we should just start wrapping up now, like with one more conversation or so. Is there anything else you guys have in mind?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay.
Not quite at the moment. Oh, I would like to re. I would like to rediscuss the conversation of judging players based on the characters they choose to pick.
When you
Okay.
when you say judging them, you mean like actually saying, "Oh, like screw you, you play Arakune," something like that.
Exactly.
I think character hate is just going to be something that exists. Cause there's always going to be that character, you know. That's the best. There's always going to be that character. It's like I just hate you. I hate your moves. I hate your framework. I hate your distortion finishes. I hate your personality. You know that kind of thing. Or they just may not like and yeah, that and now pretty much. Well, actually, no. You mean judging the person because they play the character instead of just straight up judging the character, right?
Yeah, judging the player by their character.
Yeah, that's just messed up, but
I
it
think
does
it. I think
happen.
it's a little bit of both because people are always going to have their opinion about a certain character, regardless of whoever plays the character.
Yeah, for the most part.
Um, and I say both with the incentive to with this stigma in the community where you're going to get judged along with the character. If you play a certain character, then you're a scumbag or saying you're tear whoring or saying like you're just like jumping on the bandwagon because this character's good, this, that, and the other, or this character's derpy or cheap or eat too quote unquote easy mode. You have no skill set kind of deal. You know what I mean? But then you let some other player who's known, like that's relatively known and respected, like SKD, play said character, then suddenly everyone is okay with it. It's fine. It's not a problem.
I
It's
know.
whatever. LOL, he's trolling. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like it's. I don't understand that. That always kind of pissed me off too because it's like, why do you even bother like commenting on a character that you hate, but then someone else plays that same character, you don't have a problem with it. It's like what?
Cat
Like
Elise.
where did the same stigma go? It's like why do you even bother talking about that character, but then someone else you're cool with plays a character, and it's like nothing ever happened. Like suddenly character hate is not as prevalent as it was before. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I just feel like a good amount of the community just just likes to kiss as much ass as possible when it comes to like putting certain players on a pedestal because they're quote unquote, you know what I'm saying, on top of their game consistently, and because they win more often than you do, that it's okay for them to play said characters too. But don't turn around and then just be completely a 180 on the nature of how you feel about a character because someone else is playing it. Like that just makes sense to me. If you're going to talk about a character being derpy, be consistent about it. You know, that's just like my only gripe with it.
Yeah, because people just have their fan favorite players. Like, oh, I hate Ragnar players. You all are disgusting and filthy. Oh wait, 9 ball in a row. Oh yo, oh his Ragnar mad good. I just love this player here.
Yeah, I
But then
love
they
this
would judge
player.
any other Ragnar player. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't understand that. And just people try to make the argument. They're like, well, he's legit Ronda player. He's been playing him since CT. Well, no shit. Everyone else has been playing. Like some of
Playing
these older
CT.
cats
Yeah.
on the game been playing as long as he has. I've been playing since I came late into CT. I only had 2 months into CT. So, you know what I'm saying? I played Ronda. Does that still justify the same treatment level as Nine Ball gets? Not necessarily. You know what I'm saying? I still get a couple of that same kind of comments too when you're like, oh, you know, he plays Rondo, whatever, you know what I'm saying? You're playing derby character, you know, learn someone who's actually like good. I'm like, well, even if I did learn someone who was actually a real character, you'll still be bitching about it anyways. You know what I'm saying? I pick Okinoe, I play a character that actually has real stuff, and then you bitch about it. Okay, cool. I move on to someone else. I pick Valkenheim, actually takes execution. You're going to bitch about it. Okay, I move on to New 13. You're going to bitch about it. Okay, I move on to Rachel. You're still going to bitch about it. Like, it's like, what can you do? You can't win. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
What can you do?
What can you do? You can't win. It doesn't matter what character you really play. Is if it's a character that you have issue with anyways, competitively, it's like it doesn't matter. People are going to always be people in a fighting game community. It doesn't matter if you're on Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear, Tekken, Street Fighter. It doesn't matter what game it is. Persona under knife, whatever. You know what I'm saying? People are going to have their opinion. They're going to stick to the guns, and it's just a sheep flock of people that we've known for several years. In the last 6-7 years of this fighting game community, it's the way it is. There's nothing you really can do about it. All you really can do is just stick to your character, stick to your guns. Just say, I probably play this character. If you don't like it, you know what I'm saying, you can kiss my ass and go to the next guy on that play or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to stop me from playing my own character. If you don't like it, do something about it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to take one out of your own book and just say, get good. Get
Oh,
good.
get
What can you do?
good. Oh no, that's too much.
I mean, that's just the way it is. I
They gonna
mean, it's
come
tough
back around
reality,
on
but
you.
I mean, I'm not the kind of guy to say, just flip someone off and be like, yo, just get good because you're free. You know what I'm saying? You're just free. You stay free because you're just garbage.
You're like,
You know what
nah, I
I'm
had my eyes closed.
saying? But I mean, I just feel like I could understand if you were good, like you're really good, like you're up there, like you're really solid. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe like TD level. You know what I'm saying? Like TD, Holly Moon. Like if you're good like him, you have a great understanding of the game. You know what I'm saying? You're a very solid player too. You know what I'm saying? You know your stuff. You win pretty consistently and you're still complaining about the character. I can respect that to a very decent degree. For the simple fact that he actually knows what he's doing and he actually does win and he knows the matchup, he knows that stuff. He does win against the matchup and maybe even so, then some, but he still has his opinion about said character being just stupid, you know what I'm saying? Then that's understandable, but at least the guy knows what he's doing against said situation. It's respectable because he actually is doing something about it. You know what I mean? Instead of just saying, oh, this character is just dumb. I'm gonna pick Ronda. If that doesn't work, whatever. You're cheap. I'm out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
Like I can actually respect the player more just because he just chose to grind the matchup and he actually knows how to deal with it, but then still sees it being dumb. I can respect that. It's respectable in my opinion. I can live with that.
I can go with that as well. But I will still just cast this to the day I die. So I'm fine.
That's jacked up.
Oh,
All you Arakune players out there, nah, I'm only playing. He's not that bad anymore.
Yeah.
so
Loves.
can we conclude by saying that you should just play the character that you want to play?
Nah, don't play Arakune.
Yeah.
Nah, he got stuff for
Just
you.
stick to the character you want to play. It doesn't matter if you want to play low tier character. No, stick with it. If you play high tier character, saying good job. You just load a lot of the load for saying you just load a lot of stress level from you. Good job. You picked a good character. But on that note, I guess that will conclude the nature of our discussion in this podcast.
Yeah,
Whatnot. Yeah, man, just do your own thing, man. Just don't worry about that. It's all about your own enjoyment and what you get out the game.
yeah. Anything else to add to that? You two? Jiggle stuff?
I am content.
No? Okay. Well, this is pretty much the majority what's really going to be going on during these podcasts. And yeah, Let the Rain, Jago, Seth, pretty much sign out here. I want to thank you all who ever watched. Thank you for watching, supporting me. And yeah, I'll see you guys another